You know, I really don't think I look good with bangs. Good morning, good evening, and good night, everybody. My name is Sarah, and if you have missed the past couple videos, I've been saying basically every single time that for every video I post in the month of October, I will be in a different cosplay. Today is Closet Cosplay Mabel. Mabel is from Gravity Falls, and in Closet Cosplay, basically, you just take clothes from your closet, you put them on, you say you're the character. I wanted to do a really, easy, basic transition because this is the first character you're seeing me with a wig on, and, normally you don't wear wigs with closet cosplays, but I had this laying around, so I'm gonna use it. And besides, I needed the transition because you're gonna see me getting more and more extreme with my costumes as the month goes on. We're starting off introductory, I'm easing you into it. But ignoring my looks. Today we're doing my September wrap-up because I haven't done that yet and it feels really weird because we're already really into October. September overall was not the best reading month for me. I had some troubles getting started. I just didn't want to read at all. If you saw my vlog, you probably heard me rant about that, so we're going to skip that topic. Instead, we're going to dive right on into the books I read for the month of September. For the month of September, I had a little plan going on of how I was going to write down all the books because I've been having a hard time remembering what exactly my thoughts were on the books I read because in the very early in the month, I have a totally different mood on a book than I do at the end of the month. So I took my little what if we rewrite the stars sheet that came in an owl crate I bought, and I just decided to use that as basically my book thoughts. So this paper is for The Hobbit, which was the first book I read this month. Now The Hobbit, again, I did a little vlog on this one. I gotta say it was a little bit of a letdown. I really enjoyed The Hobbit, don't get me wrong, but it was just I had such high hopes because I remember watching the movies, I remember loving it so much. I know the magic, the wonder, the grand adventure, the dragons, and I didn't really get that, and that's what, overall, this book was great. If you go into it without expectations, you're gonna love it. But I had expectations. I don't know how you won't have expectations. Everyone knows this story. This is what defined fantasy for such a long period of time. We're finally moving away from it a little bit, but still, this is a huge part of how our culture learned how to write fantasy. Now, I gave this book 4 stars, but it's kind of on a lower end of 4 stars. I didn't feel right giving it a 3. It's think of it like a 3.9, 4.0. It's barely on that threshold. It was good, it was enjoyable, but it was a letdown. I don't know how much I need to summarize this book for you guys because it is The Hobbit, but it's essentially the story of Bilbo Baggins as he is dragged along on a journey to be a burglar, to go steal from a dragon, along with a crew of wizards and dwarves, and it's supposed to be magical and amazing along the way. You meet some elves, you meet some awesome fantasy stuff, but all that magic and wonder kind of was really disconnected. I wanted to love this so much, but it felt so removed. Especially in the end of this book when the big climax was here, our main character just kind of wasn't involved, and when he did get involved again, people just filled him in on the details. And it left me feeling very underwhelmed, disappointed, I wanted more from this book. So I do still have the rest of the books to read because I am doing the Tolkien readathon, so I am reading the rest of the Lord of the Rings the remaining of the year, so hopefully it will be better. I have high hopes, but again, this took me forever to read. A lot of the books I read this month were on audio, so you're going to see a lot of pictures, and I'm just going to be reading my little notes here. So the next book I read was The House in the Cerulean Sea. So every time I talked about this, I was referring to it as a middle grade. I've been told that that is incorrect. This isn't classified as a middle grade, and if that is true, then I want to change my rating because I rated this as a middle grade, and as a middle grade, this book is 5 stars. But there are hints in the ending that this might be for an older audience, not the 12 and 13-year-olds that middle grade is generally aimed at. So if this is made for an older audience, I definitely want to give it a 4 stars. However, because I read it as a middle grade, my opinion is 5 stars. No one told me this book was gay, which is the main reason why people were saying it's not made for middle grade, because the relationship was between the 2 adults in the story. This is a story about a caseworker who is sent around to magical orphanages to make sure that his children there are being treated correctly. He is sent on a very special top secret case to this orphanage in the Cerulean Sea, and there he meets a cast of crazy characters, including the Antichrist, including a gnome. A lot of crazy stuff is going on in this orphanage that no one talks about because it's top secret, and slowly he has to realize, is this place safe to keep open? Are these children too extreme? And what is going on with the caretaker, the master of the house, who he may or may not have feelings for because, again, gay romance was just no one told me about. Even though our main character and our perspective character was the adult in this book, this caseworker, the real focus was on the children, which is why I consider this a middle grade. They're so sweet and kind and loving, and they felt like real people. Even though they were gnomes and wyverns and the Antichrist, they felt real and magical and wonderful, and they had actual struggles and identity issues, and it was just so fascinating watching them slowly open up to the world around them because they've been stuck on this island orphanage for such a long time, venturing out into the real world where people are going to have a prejudice against them. Like, this book does deal with kind of like really heavy undertones, but it's done in the middle grade kind of way. So again, I'm treating this like a middle grade, and if it is that rating, I do believe that this was done amazingly well for the audience it was intended for. I think the only problem I have with this book that's directly in the text is the ending is a little bit cheesy. It's a little bit very drawn up and drawn out, and I think it was cute and fitting for the story, but also it's like it kind of threw me off a little bit. So like I said, if this is in fact a middle grade, 5 stars, great and amazing. I loved it so much. I knew right away it was going to be a great book, but if it's made for an older audience, specifically young adult, I have some issues. So once that book was done, getting into the spoopy season, the next book that was read was City of Ghosts. This book is a middle grade paranormal horror book, which is, it makes it sound more spoopy than it actually is. In this story, our main character can see the dead. Her parents are both ghost hunters and they do not know this. So when they take her on a world tour to go film a TV show about ghost hunting, they don't know that they're taking her into potentially dangerous situations because she can in fact pass through the veil from living to dead. Because this is book 1, it only focuses on the first city. Book 2, it was just released, moves on to the next city in their tour. Book 1 only focuses on this one city in Scotland that is often referred to as the City of Ghosts. However, she doesn't realize how true that is until she realizes that the ghosts in Scotland are very different from the ghosts in America. I loved the tone of this book. I thought it was perfect. It was just the right amount of spoopy horror for a middle grade. It wasn't scary, but it definitely was setting you in the mood for the decay of fall. I thought it was such a well-set book, especially with the way the city was described, the way the ghosts were described, when our character passed through the veil to see what life was like in Scotland on the other side of death. It was stunning. I loved the way that everything was described. I do have some problems with the narration though. This book is told in first person, and our main character has I'm going to call it a psychic connection with a ghost who is attached to her, and they can kind of have a back and forth in their mind. The issue is that the ghost who is attached to her, her friend, comments on the narration, as in she's thinking the narration in her head. So that really threw me out of it. Overall, I really liked this book. Great setting, 4 stars, but I'm just like, the narration was a little weird. The last audiobook I have on this list is Tristan Strong Punches a Hole in the Sky. This is a Rick Riordan Presents book that deals with West African-inspired culture and religion. My main issue with this is that I'm not at all familiar with West African culture and religion, and it is not well explained in this book at all. This is a doorway fantasy, meaning our character enters the world of this religion, like in West African religion. I don't know if there's like an actual name for it, but in this belief system there is a separate parallel world, and our main character punches a hole in the sky and accidentally falls into this world. And I didn't understand it at all, and because it was a doorway fantasy, because we were experiencing this magic and wonder in a foreign area, I had no clue what was going on. Like, I really liked everything that was happening, I just had no clue what the context was. But if you ignore that, I love the characters, I love the relationships, I love the arcs and the build-up and how consequences were dealt with the actions. I was just like always confused, and I feel like that was my main issue with the book. I gave it 3 stars. If I knew what was going on, 4 stars. Great, amazing, not perfect, but still very enjoyable. I was like this the entire time, like what? Like what? Enjoyable, but very what? After that, I picked up a manga, Bleach Volume 25. I do not rate my manga, however, I do enjoy them and I do want to talk about them on my channel. So Bleach is a manga slash anime, because it does have an anime adaptation. It is a story about a kid who accidentally gets Shinigami powers, or Death God powers. He has to become a Soul Reaper, slay the evil spirits, save the good spirits, do some stuff. Things go down, betrayals, backstabbing, wars, fights, a lot of fighting. This is a fighting manga. And in this volume specifically, he realizes that he has an evil spirit living inside of him, so that is what this volume is dealing with. It's him fighting that evil spirit to try and gain control, to try and keep power, to do a lot of pretty awesome stuff. I really liked the fight in this volume, and I liked the new characters that were introduced. I grew up reading this story, so like honestly, the majority of my enjoyment is nostalgia. But if you are looking for a very nice long paranormal series that like, it's not very complex, it's this one. It's really good. And finally, the last book I read this month was Trials of Apollo, Book 1, The Hidden Oracle. This is a reread for me because the last book in Trials of Apollo is coming out today as I'm filming this. I'm waiting for the mailman to get here so I can go run and get my copy of book 5. But I needed to reread book 1 because I felt like a little out of touch with the characters. I've been talking about this a lot. Every time I bring up Trials of Apollo, I always comment how I never really got as close to the characters as I did with the rest of Rick Riordan's books. This is the 3rd series in his Camp Half-Blood series. Like, we have Percy Jackson, we have Heroes Olympus, and now we have Trials of Apollo. And I loved these other 2 series, but I never really got attached with this one. So I reread this because I wanted to get attached. Book 5 is coming. I need to care about the characters if I'm going to care about anything that happens in the book. And I gotta say, rereading this definitely helped. I'm still not 100% attached. Like, I'm still a little hesitant on Meg, who is our side character in this book, who follows around Apollo, because he is a mortal in this book and he has to deal with mortality and dealing with what's it like no longer being a god, because that's gonna be hard on you. The plot of this book is all about Apollo trying to reclaim all of the oracles who have gone silent. 5 oracles in total are missing, and there's 3 emperors he has to defeat in order to save them. And so that was pretty awesome. Book 1 deals with the hidden oracle, the oracle without a specific person attached to it, and it's like, I feel like it's kind of spoiler describing which one it is, but like, if you know Greek mythology, you're gonna figure it out. I just gotta say, it's pretty cool, it's pretty epic. I definitely am enjoying this more as a reread, and I can't wait to get book 5, finish the series, and then reread everything else because I got it. I was gonna read this in the month of October, like this month, but I got excited. And so yeah, this is still a 4 stars. It's not a 5 stars. Like, I still think there are things that could be improved upon, but there's definitely a higher rated 4 stars. So that has been all of the books I read in the month of September. I know it's a little bit less than I normally do, but hey, reading slumps, what are you gonna do about it? Also, school started, which sucks because, like, that definitely has knocked down my reading time. But we're gonna work through it, we're gonna figure out how to adjust, and once we get there, I'll be back to reading to 10 to 11 books a month. So if you guys have any recommendations on what I should read next, keep in mind I do have a TBR for the month of October, but I'll pick up anything else that fancies me. Please leave that down in the comment section down below. Don't forget that every single week this month I will be dressing up as a different character, both Mondays and Fridays, completely separate, so check back again to see who I am next time. While you're down in the comment section, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. And as always, good night, good evening, and good morning, everybody.